And they said, how did you do this? And I just said, I asked. And that, again, that was a lesson that I learned that like, sometimes all you have to do is ask,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you have to have the foresight to do that. And you've got to have the courage of the conviction. But I knew I was good at what I did. I just grew up with in my mind with no fear of trying anything. I remember my grandfather saying to me, I dare to tread where angels fear. I think I was about 8 years old when he told me that, which translated later in life for me to jump first and build your wings on the way down.
Mm-hmm.
So I always was into something, always starting some kind of money making opportunity. And I'm one of these people who just feel everybody's pain, but and I want to help. So, I just I started studying everything I could about the mental journey and the mindset journey that we all take.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized as I was studying and getting certified in this was that most of what I was reading, I wasn't learning. The human body is the same. It's very similar for me with coaching, and where where I differ from therapy, right, and from many other coaches, but you know how when you go to see a therapist, you usually go to see a therapist because something is broken,
Mm-hmm.
right? You feel something's broken, and the therapist treats you as such, where they very often have a scale from -5 to +5, and 0 is the starting point.
Did you know there's a technology that's actually an app on your phone that uses sound waves to tell your brain what you want your brain to do? We had a young man that was on a guest on our podcast, the Mike Litton Experience, who had a traumatic brain injury. He was sleeping 3 hours a night. He's using NewCalm now and he's sleeping more. Go to newcalm.com, Mike15 promo code. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. Mike is passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
Michael Shaw, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited for our time together. And like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go up to today, and then we want to talk about what you're doing with Michael Shaw Mindset and the coaching that you're doing to help people basically transform their lives. Thanks again for being here, bud.
Thank you very much, Mike, for having me. I think it's a great show, the real stories, the real business, and then getting to the real human being behind everything.
Yeah. So where were you born?
So I was born in the Bronx, New York in 1968. Um, Moved out to Queens, New York, and then ultimately grew up uh, my formative years in Long Island.
Wow. So how long did you live in Queens?
I lived in Queens for 9 years. We moved to Long Island when I was 9 years old.
There you go. And then Long Island basically through high school?
Long Island through high school, and I went to upstate New York in Albany, New York for college, came back to Long Island for a couple of years, and then ultimately landed in New Jersey. And now I live part-time New Jersey, part-time Naples, Florida.
How long ago did you move to Florida?
We are in our third season here.
Oh, gotcha. So let's back up for just a second, if it's okay. So in Long Island, which was a large part of your childhood, or
Right.
pardon me, I apologize, Queens. In Queens, which was a large part of your childhood too, what was your favorite thing about growing up there and your favorite thing about growing up in Long Island?
Right. So Queens, I only lived in until I was 9 years old.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the 70s, right?
Mhm.
The 70s, no cell phones, no anything.
Mhm.
Where at and it wasn't Manhattan, but it was still a city, an urban environment. Um, and at 6 years old, I was riding my bicycle to school.
Yeah.
Like it was just, you didn't know what you didn't know at that age.
Mhm.
And yeah, we lived in a garden apartment and we didn't have our own lawn or whatever, but there was always something to do.
Yeah.
And kids that grow up in that kind of environment are very resourceful,
Mhm.
mischievous, getting into
Mhm.
good trouble. Um, but yeah, that was just it was the independence. I don't know if that necessarily comes from Queens or just from the time that I was in. But that's something that I liked about that time of my life.
So what changed when you moved to Long Island?
Long Island was a culture shock. I remember the first day I went to school in fourth grade,
Mhm.
November 19th, 1976, um, seeing that all of these kids were wearing sneakers that I thought only rich people had, right? They had the Pumas and the Adidas shell toes. And in Queens, my parents took us to the dollar shoe outlet where you bought a pair and you got another pair for $1. And at the end of the day, they sold the big pretzels like you would get it at the ball game
Mhm.
for a quarter or whatever. And I didn't even know kids my age carried money with them,
Mhm.
and then one of the kids in the class lent me 50 cents and I was like, this is a whole different world.
Mhm.
So that was the big culture shock, going into that suburban environment. Um, but kids are kids, and I found my way there. Just the same, it was readily evident that there was a toughness lacking in the kids there from the kids that I grew up with in Queens. Definitely more sheltered. And we by no means moved there because we were rich. We moved there because I think my parents borrowed some money from some other relatives to buy a house because Queens was starting to get kind of dangerous.
Mhm. Yeah, you make moves for lots of reasons, and safety is a big one. Definitely a big
Yeah.
one. So, growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
Sadly, or not, I think I was the most influential person to me. My childhood wasn't amazing, in the fact that I grew up in a violent household.
Oh, sorry.
So and it was a weird situation because it wasn't the classic, you have a father who drinks and it's not a constant. Both my parents loved us. I had an older brother, younger sister, loved us very much. My father coached our teams and and attended all our games and spent time with us and everything. But it was volatile and it could go up at any second.
Hmm.
Um, so and we later found out he was suffering from depression, what have you, and he would be in and out of work. And so I think as a child that, growing up through my teenage years where you are heavily influenced or have outside influences, um, I didn't necessarily respect most of the things I would hear from him
Mhm.
because he wasn't the example I wanted to follow. Um, there were a couple of things I realize now that he said that do hold value, but I wouldn't say I had that as an influence. I think I was influenced by my friends and my environment, and I was one of these kids who just believed that anything was possible. So I would be inspired by Rocky or Don Mattingly or
Mhm.
a sports figure or a figure in the movies. Um, and then I just, it was there was no fear.
Mhm.
that we, just grew up in my mind with no fear of trying anything. I remember my grandfather saying to me, I dare to tread where angels fear.
Mm.
I think I was about 8 years old when he told me that, which translated later in life for me to jump first and build your wings on the way down.
Mhm.
So I always was into something, always starting some kind of money making opportunity from age probably 8 or 9 when I took over my brother's paper route, you know, progressing on forward, detailing cars and shoveling snow and mowing lawns, whatever it was, there was always something I could do.
Yeah,
Um, but no real strong influence.
that's cool. So, in high school, did you have a favorite subject?
Yeah, gym. No joke. I was on the marine fitness team instead of gym. Um, I didn't love school. I will say I liked history and English the most because history was like I was learning a story, and English
Mhm.
gave me the opportunity to write stories and be creative versus math and science, which were very linear and, just rules. I wasn't a
Mhm.
very good rules person. So yeah, I mean, I was not a lover of school. I wish I could go back to school now at 57 years old. I love to learn now, but that's because I pick and choose what I learn.
Well, I was never really into school myself, and I'm back in school full time, and I'm 59.
That's awesome. What are you
So
going to
I'm
school for?
I'm finishing my bachelor's degree, and then I'm on to an MBA program.
Nice.
I have a job waiting for me at a local college full time. And once I finish my bachelor's and my master's, then I start there. So,
That's great.
yeah. So, for the first time in my life, I'm actually a professional educator. And I've been teaching for 33 years, right? This is the first time that I've ever been a professional educator. So, um, really digging it. Like, I'm really enjoying it. And the being back in school thing, I hadn't been in school in college for 28 years. And it was an adjustment. It was an adjustment. I started 10 weeks ago, and I finished the end of next spring. So with my bachelor's. So,
So you're the definition of a true alpha, as I see it. Always learning, always teaching.
yeah. Well, I love to teach. I just truly love to teach. And I try to add value everywhere I go, right? What I was impressed with myself was I was able to pick up sort of where I left off 28 years ago. I was not real certain how this was going to go, but the first three classes that I had, um, I completed, and I had two A's and a B. Um, the B was very high; it was almost an A, very close. And it's frustrating for me because my standard is much different than my standard used to be, and should have been three A's. But that's another conversation altogether. But I'm going to school at my dream school where I've all my life wanted to attend, and this presented an opportunity for me to do that, and so I'm literally living my dream right now. So if you ever think about going back to school, I highly encourage it. I sort of looked at myself a couple of times and went, "What are you doing?" You know?
Are you actually on campus or are you
No, no,
online?
I'm online. It's
Right.
100% online. I was born in Oklahoma,
Right.
and that right. I'm going here. This is where I'm going to
Nice.
school.
Oh, okay. Oh,
I was born
you're
in Oklahoma. When I was 6 years old, seven, I would play golf, play football, and me and my buddies all wanted to play for Barry Switzer,
right. Of course you did.
who's the man in
Right.
football in Oklahoma. And it made us Oklahoma fans. And then as I got older, it just got worse, right? And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I've always wanted a degree on the wall from the University of Oklahoma, and I'm a few months away from accomplishing that.
That's
So
great.
it's yeah, and it's exciting, man. it's hard to describe how cool it is to be going to school at the college that you've dreamed of attending your entire life.
Right.
It's hard to put into words. Anyway, it's really cool. I'm having a blast. It's an absolute ball. So and I'm loving the learning part. Like I'm
Sure.
literally loving, like, our podcast. Our podcast has been in existence for a little over 2 years. August was 2 years. We're now in 76 countries worldwide. The other night, we picked up Burkina Faso, which is a nation in Africa. And I had literally, the night before we picked them up, I had literally written a paper about non-Western art, about the art of masquerades in
Hmm.
Africa. And I literally wrote in my paper, Burkina Faso, the night before, and we pick up Burkina Faso the next day. I can't explain that, but it's pretty flippin' cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's wild. So in high school, did you have a favorite teacher? Probably your gym teacher.
Um, my marine fitness coach was one of my favorites.
There you go.
Great guy, Harry Satino. God rest his soul. But I did have an English teacher who was very cool, Mr. Grasso, I believe, and he was just he understood where we were at,
Yeah.
and he met us where we were at, instead of just you know teaching to us. He taught with
Yeah.
us. Very very cool.
That's awesome. So you leave high school, you graduate high school. Where do
Mhm.
you go after that?
So this is where the lack of influence from my parents and did have an effect on my life, because my father was born in 1934, my mother in 42, so they're Depression era parents, right? And that's a mindset in itself.
Mhm.
For anyone who's a lot younger than we are, they may not understand that, but that's a mindset of just never knowing where your next anything is coming from.
Mhm.
And as much as they did love me and believe in me, and you could do anything you want just if you put your mind to it, as parents say, great, but there was no instruction how,
Mhm.
right? So I had an older brother. He went to college, so that was the obvious next step. But I didn't take anything seriously in that process,
Mm.
which I wish I would have.
Yeah.
So I never went through the process like my children have now, of applying to various schools and going to visit them,
Mhm.
whatever. My brother went to St. John's University in Queens, so I applied to St. John's University in Queens. And uh, a little bit of a funny story is I actually got denied. I got my decline letter, but it said, um, if I would like to come in and discuss this with the dean at one of the colleges, St. Vincent College at St. John's University,
Mhm.
I could. Um, so I did. And when I got there, the dean wasn't there, but his assistant was. His assistant was a sophomore at the school, and she was real pretty. And we went out to lunch, and I got into school. I'm good. That's the nicest way I could put it. But so
That's quite a
I got
story.
in. Yeah,
It's
I
kind of
got
like
into.
admissions 101, right?
Yeah, listen, if that was the way you could get in, I'd like to go. I'd like to see who I could have a meeting with at Harvard.
Yeah, come on.
But so I got into St. Vincent's College. Went for 2 years, and then I transferred to the University of Albany just
Why
to
the
get
transfer?
away, because at St. John's I still lived at home.
Yeah.
and I had just had enough of that by then.
Yeah.
So I went away to University of Albany, and graduated in 1991 with a psych degree
There you
that I
go.
had no idea how to use.
Why did you choose psychology?
I didn't. It chose me. I chose business when I went to Albany,
Hmm.
and um, my business classes, calculus, and I think one of my economics classes were taught by Asian professors who I could not understand a word they said.
Hmm.
So I went to the tutoring, which was tutored by Asian students, who just seemed to be all that was in the business program at that time.
Hmm.
So I wasn't doing very well in those classes, and psychology seemed like something I could try. And it was, and I did find it interesting. And it was, with it was something where, I was like, okay, I can read about this. I understand it because it's, developmental psychology and children, and I've been through this. I could identify with it. Um, and that's where I ended up.
So, what's the single most important thing you learned at Albany?
The single most important thing I learned at Albany didn't come from the classroom. It came from my experience there, where I started multiple businesses while in college.
Okay.
Um, and I taught myself a lot of different business lessons, how buying, supply, demand, how to get things done, how to get the people to work for me. Um, and Yeah, that was, I mean, that really kind of formed the some of the foundation for how I would do things later on in life.
So, after Albany,
Hmm.
where do you go?
After Albany, I went back home to Long Island, with all of my meathead friends, um, who I'm still friends with to this day. It's one of my proudest things is that I'm still friends with all the kids I grew up with, all the guys I grew up with.
Mhm.
Um, Went back to Long Island, had absolutely no idea how to use my degree. Again, wasn't a very serious student, and looked for jobs in the newspaper, right? Because that's what we did,
Yeah,
right?
help wanted, right?
Yeah, help
Yeah.
wanted, this, that, and the other. And I just had no idea what I wanted to do, but yet I still had this arrogance of, I know I'm going to do something great one day, which is dangerous, which is
Where do you
with no
think that came
guidance
from?
can be a dangerous thing.
Where
And
do
I
you think
actually,
that came from?
I think that came from, my parents always telling me you could do anything you want. You're,
Hmm.
just this constant thing, but no guidelines. So I got a job at a retail sports store in the mall,
Hmm.
right? In the local mall. Went through their management training program. Um, Had to move to upstate New York for part of that. Came back, got my own store, got in a huge fight with the district manager, who is an asshole. No way around that. Um, so spent a year and a half or so in the training program, got to the point of manager, got my own store, um, and then quit. Just quit. I did, however, meet my first wife there. She was my assistant manager at the store. She ended up quitting too. Um, so that was a good thing. But yeah, I quit that, and was really funny. What happened next was I actually went for an interview at a headhunting firm.
Hmm.
And the day I went was this horrible snowstorm. And I'm all in my suit and tie, and I've got my briefcase, which had nothing but a sandwich in it. Um, and it was in Manhattan, and walking from the train to the office I had to go to for the interview, I slipped off the curb,
Mm.
full yard sale, fell in the street. Briefcase went sliding down the ice in the street. Was a total mess. Cleaned myself up, got to the interview in time, kind of told them that story. And they said to me, they saw me handle myself, and they actually wanted to hire me at the firm, at the search firm, instead of finding me a job. They wanted me to work for them,
Hmm.
which I did. I took the job. Um, and at the time I was 23 years old, going to the gym a lot. And like you, loving to teach, I would help everyone I met on, here's a nutrition plan, here's how you should be lifting,
Mhm.
blah, blah, blah. And so long story short, I was a terrible headhunter. Um, and the owner of the firm said, you really seem to be into this weightlifting stuff and whatever. Why don't you be a personal trainer? And personal trainers weren't even really a thing. This is what, 1993?
Yeah.
Celebrities had trainers. Like,
Yeah.
hey, we're a big
Not
deal.
regular people, right?
Not right, not regular people. So, I thought about it, and I said, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I do love being in the gym. Um, and I was in New Jersey living in New Jersey at the time, because that's where my last gig in the sporting goods store was. I was a manager in New Jersey. So I went walking around to different gyms and to see what this all entailed. And again, you have to remember, this is before the internet or anything.
Mhm.
So, you have to find out how to get certified, and it's not all at your fingertips.
Right.
And I sent away for the materials, which would get mailed to me to study to then become certified.
Mhm.
But I found this little mom and pop shop in this very affluent town in New Jersey, and they had just opened, and they had personal training in one room, and they taught group classes in the other.
Mhm.
And this is how blindly ballsy I was at that age. In the interview, I don't even have a certification yet. I said to them, well, I really like what you're doing here. Um, I want to come on as a trainer, and ultimately I'd like to become part of your expansion and growth, and grow into ownership. And it was the wife who I was interviewing with, and she said, well, why don't you get certified first? And then we could talk, and which I did, and she hired me. And 3 years later, I bought that business.
Wow. But you planted that seed 3 years prior.
I did.
That's pretty
And
cool.
and that was the first time I followed a plan, and
Mhm.
and stuck to it for myself. On and I became best friends with the owner, with the husband. So he would go for 5, 6, 10 mile runs on a Saturday afternoon after work when it was 100 degrees out, and I would go with him, and I don't run. And I wasn't about to, and I would kill myself to stay up with him. But I started out there with one client, $12 an hour, twice a week. So I was making 24 bucks a week. And this is 1994. Um, and but I didn't go in, train my client, and leave. I went there at 6 in the morning, and I stayed there at 9 till 9 at night. And if a machine needed to be fixed, I learned how to fix it. And if somebody needed a new client needed to be spoken to, I did that. And if someone wanted a trial session, I did that. And if someone needed help because somebody else was teaching a group class, I went in and I helped. And I learned that business inside and out. And a year later, I was booked with clients, and I became the head trainer. And then they wanted to move into a bigger location. And I went to all of my clients and I told them, I said, listen, we're going to be expanding into a flagship facility. um, and explained everything that facility was going to have versus this little place that they were used to. And I said, but I don't know for sure, but I can guess that the um, the prices are probably going to go up.
Mm.
But if you would like to buy a year's worth of sessions now, I can sell them to you, at the current rate and lock you in. And every single one of them bought. So between 100 and 150 sessions. And I walked into the owners with a stack of checks that literally partially funded their expansion. They could not believe it. And they said, "How did you do this?" And I just said, "I asked." And that, again, that was a lesson that I learned that, like, sometimes all you have to do is ask,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you have to have the foresight to do that. And you've got to have the courage of the conviction. But I knew I was good at what I did. I knew they wanted to stay with me. And that kind of repeated itself for me. So we did move into that next facility, and I met someone who needed a trainer in Manhattan, which is for people who aren't from that area, was about Manhattan was 45 minutes from where I was in New Jersey. So I started training that person, but this was now all the money was for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So instead of making whatever I was making, 25, $30 an hour at the time, I was now able to charge $65.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I had one client twice a week for $65 in a typical Manhattan high-rise building. So I got some little business cards made up, and I gave them to the doorman. I said, "I will give you $100 for everybody, any client you get me."
Mm.
I ended up with the whole building. Quit, quit my job, and now just rode my bicycle around Manhattan training people. And it referrals, all based on referrals, and literally built a nice business up for myself. But I was still friends with the owners of where I used to work. We were actually training for a bodybuilding show together. This was 1997,
Mm-hmm.
bodybuilding competition. And he told me during the day of our competition, we were walking through Manhattan. He said he wanted to sell the business for $500,000. I didn't have $500,000, but I said, "I want to buy it." Okay. Um, so one of my clients was a major Wall Street guy. You would know him. I'll leave his name out of it, but he's on TV every day now on CNBC. Has his own show. He's a very big personality. And I used to train him at 4:45 in the morning on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'm sorry, 3:45 in the morning on Tuesdays and Thursdays,
Mm-hmm.
because that was the only time he had. Um, and I always got there before he did. Never failed. Um, and we'd listen to Bob Marley. He built a little gym in one of his offices, and we would train. And I walked into him and I said, "Hey, listen, the gym I used to work at, which his wife was a member of, which helped, is
Mm-hmm.
for sale." And he said, "How much?" I said, $500,000. And he gave me one of these, like a dog who hears something, tilted head, walked out of the room, came back in and handed me a check for $100,000. And he said, "Here, see what you can do with that." I took that, I got a partner, and we bought the business. That's how I got my first business.
Wow. And you were business partners with Jim Cramer.
I
Unbelievable.
didn't say
Unbelievable.
that. I didn't
No, you
say
didn't
that.
say it. I said it. I said it. No,
I
we're
didn't say
good.
that.
We're good.
A
He's
wonderful,
one of my favorite people in the world.
he's a wonderful human being. He is one of the most intelligent people you could ever meet, with
Yeah.
absolute total recall. Um, and I wasn't the only person he did that for. He did that for other people as well.
Yeah.
Really a fantastic guy.
I sure think the world of him. I'd love to get him on the podcast.
I haven't spoken to him in years, but I wouldn't put it past him to come on.
I'd love to have him on. We had Lee Steinberg on the other day,
That's awesome.
the super agent. So
Yeah.
yeah, big guy. So so you bought the gym. How long did you own it?
I owned the gym for 2.5 or 3 years. Turned out the partner I chose was not the right partner.
Hmm.
Um, but I one of my employees left left training and became a day trader.
Hmm.
And it's very funny how life works out. And um, my first marriage ended around the same time, around early 2000s, and I was like, I'm going to try this day trading thing out too. So I sold my part of the business and I went to this day trading house. Actually, this was 2000, because my daughter was being born, uh, just had been born. And where you day traded other people's money,
Mhm.
and you got this buying power, whatever. I was a terrible day trader, worse day trader than I was a headhunter. But I did meet someone who has become a big influence in my life, a friend of mine,
Mhm.
um, a few years younger than me. And it turned out we'd grown up on the same street in Queens.
Wow.
We didn't know each other, but because we were like 5 years apart in
Yeah.
age, but we both grew up on 260th Street in Queens.
Wow.
And this guy was the quintessential intelligent, super street smart kid.
Mhm.
And he borrowed 30 grand from his parents and was trading his own money and made close to 3 million bucks in 10 months.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'd watch him and it was like watching Mozart,
Mm.
play the piano or something.
Yeah.
It was incredible. But we became, and still are to this day, the closest of friends. And when I tell you everything he has ever told me has been right and has been ahead of the curve, including introducing me to my wife, who we are about to celebrate 15 years, um, in a couple of weeks. Um, so that was the most important thing I got out of my time day trading,
Mhm.
right? Was meeting him. But I ended up leaving day trading after a few months because I was absolutely horrible at it. Um, and then we had 9/11,
Mhm.
and I took a job at a place I don't even remember the name of the company. Um, after 9/11, when nobody would step on a plane, and the mission of this company was to consolidate sales meetings. So if you were somebody who worked in the automobile industry, let's say,
Mhm.
instead of having to fly all over the country for individual meetings for they would get all the vendors in your vertical and put them in one place and create a weekend, and you would come and you'd have these micro meetings.
Hmm.
And my job was to sell those, right?
Mhm.
Except nobody wanted to get on a plane because it was 9/11, just after 9/11. And and they were 70, I think it was $79,000,
Mhm.
right? But you're gonna have all your meetings in one place, yada blah 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 blah. And if you sold it, you got up and you rang the bell in the front of the room. It was a typical boiler room type atmosphere, everybody just on the phone. And I was not going to leave there until I rang the bell, right? And I was making no money, 250 bucks a week they would give you just to survive.
Mhm.
So this is 2001 probably. And I stuck it out there till I finally sold a package, rang the bell, and quit. Went and got a job as a personal trainer in Manhattan now, working for someone else for 25 bucks an hour, where I had, you know, starting over basically.
Mhm.
Followed the same thing, the the same path, with the exception of the week before I was supposed to start that job, I ruptured my Achilles,
Mm.
right? So now to get to work from New Jersey into Manhattan with a full cast on my after having surgery on crutches, I would drive part of the way, get on the PATH train, take it into Manhattan, get up the stairs, and I was trying to get clients on the gym floor on crutches.
Wow.
But this was my place. This was
Mm-hmm.
my world. And I got fully booked within 2 weeks. I sold training packages to people. And within 9 months from that start date, 9 months later, I opened up New York personal training.
Mm.
Brought a bunch of trainers with me. And it was very simple. I said, you can stay here and make $25 an hour while they're charging $100 an hour. So they're making 75 and you're making 25.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can come with me, pay me $1,000 a month rent and charge whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
And you make all the money. And I showed them doing the math. If you're a 40-hour trainer, and you give yourself a $50 an hour raise, okay, you're making an extra $2,000 a week. You just gave yourself a $100,000 raise this year.
Exactly.
Brought them on, and I worked 24 hours a day.
Wow.
I stood again. I sold all of my clients a year package, just like I had done earlier.
Mm-hmm.
This was so now I'd have the seed money to open up.
Mm-hmm.
And I stood outside on the street corners in the summer when people were going to work, and I handed them an ice water and a pass for a free personal training session. And literally that's how I built the business. Again, no internet, no anything, just this was my lane, and it never occurred to me that it wasn't going to work.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Michael Shaw mindset, and we're going to talk about how you got there and the most important thing you've learned being a coach. We'll be right back. Did you know there's an app that has no side effects that allows you to use sound waves to tell your brain what you want it to do? It's called newcalm.com, and it's amazing. It literally uses sound waves. If you want to tell your brain to go to sleep, if you want to tell your brain to recover, if you want to tell your brain to put you in peak physical state, if you want to tell your brain to focus, if you want to tell your brain to take a power nap, you can do all of these things and more with newcalm.com. Go to newcalm.com today, promo code Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go there today. We're back with Michael Shaw, and we're talking, before the break, we were talking about how you started a personal training company in New York, Manhattan, right?
Right.
And how you were building the business and handing out ice waters and a free pass and that kind of thing, and helping to get that business up and going and running. At some point, you decided to get into coaching. Can you talk about that mindset? Like, what was it that you've been coaching, but you've been sort of training, right? You decided at some point to get into coaching. Can you talk about that for a second?
Sure. Coaching actually found me, I like to say. So with the personal training business, I had clients that stayed with me for 20 years.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, this is paying $50, $60, $70,000 a year to go to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't stay with me because I could count reps better than anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
They stay with me because I actually, before there even was this term, was their life coach as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even realize I was doing it, but it was, I like you, I love to learn and I love to teach. And I was always learning from very introspective and learning from my own experiences and really taking the time to understand how my actions today were formed by something previously in my life, a lot from growing up and from we've already discussed, and how maybe things I would have done differently if I had taken different steps, whatever. And it was just always very interesting to me. And this is where some of what I had learned as a student of psychology came in, and it's all started to come together for me. But more directly, I sold my business in 2017. And so at the time, my children were 15 and 17. They're now 23 and 25. and I really didn't know where to put myself after I sold the training business. I worked within the field as a consultant for a while, um, but then I watched, um, especially my daughter, who is Ivy League graduate now and absolutely brilliant, but really struggled with anxiety
Mm.
and depression, more anxiety at the time. And luckily, I had the freedom and the time to spend as much as I needed to with her,
Yeah.
meeting her where she was, and it would be we would FaceTime for 8 hours a day,
Mm.
just some days for me to get her out of bed.
Mm.
Um, and then um, unfortunately, uh, one of her close friends committed suicide
Mm.
at a very young age, and then another friend of hers, more peripheral, committed suicide. I hadn't mentioned this, but just going back, my father ended up committing suicide in 1996. So, you know, it just pulled at my heart with these kids were 23, 24, 25 years old. How did they not have somebody to talk to?
Yeah.
Like, I wish I had the chance to talk to them. And I knew these kids,
Mhm.
right? This was real to me. And then I just watching this, and I'm one of these people who just feel everybody's pain, like, and I want to help. So, I started studying everything I could about the mental journey and the mindset journey that we all take.
Mhm.
And what I realized as I was studying and getting certified in this was that most of what I was reading, I wasn't learning. It was just actually validating how I already coached people
Mm.
and coached my own kids. And I was like, oh, so I've been doing it right. And I didn't even know I was doing it. Um, and, and while learning, I was able to compartmentalize the lessons to this is how I would disseminate this knowledge to somebody who's struggling with anxiety, who maybe is a student, and this is how I would give it to someone who is in a 9 to 5 but wants to open up their own business but has anxiety about that.
Mhm.
Um, and just kind of started formulating my own lanes on how to give this information to people and meet them where they are, no matter what it is they're going through in their life. Um, and it just kind of grew from there.
Wow. So today, who is your quintessential client?
Oof. Um, I have a few. I have a few avatars. Um, I love working with young people.
Yeah.
Um, I absolutely do. They're so open. They've grown up where mental health and mindset is something they're aware of. It's not
Mhm.
something we were aware of growing up at all. It wasn't even a thing.
We never talked about it.
Um, some of my clients, I actually like working with people who are on the outside look like they have everything, but they're struggling with something on the inside. I met a lot of men like this who are super, super, super successful, um, and have miserable home lives,
Mm.
and just can't seem to get the respect they want at home, or there's just something missing, that they're so revered in one place and just miserable in the other.
Mhm.
Um, and then I've always worked very well with women too. The biggest fan of strong women you will ever meet. And then I believe in women and what they can do. Um, Very often more so than they do. So I know it's a very broad answer to your question, but I genuinely love working with these different types of people. Um, but the one constant that carried over from personal training into coaching, when I had the training business, I would have 15 different programs. The Buff Bride program, if you were getting married, the All Heart program, if you were coming after rehab, whatever it is. And those were marketing terms because the training is the training is the training is the training, right? The human body is the same. It's very similar for me with coaching, and where where I differ from therapy, right, and from many other coaches. But you know how when you go to see a therapist, you usually go to see a therapist because something is broken,
Mm-hmm.
right? You feel something's broken, and the therapist treats you as such, where they very often have a scale from -5 to +5, and 0 is the starting point, and something's broken, so you're somewhere between 0 and -5.
Right.
And their goal is to work with you, maybe for the rest of your life, to get you back to 0, to fix it. I want to get you to 5,000,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I want to do it in 12 weeks. Um, so that's the difference in the core philosophy and the way I work. And my point, and to bring it back to how it's similar to training, is the coaching is always about getting you to understand who you are and how you want to show up in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what I call your I am declaration. We have to get to a point where you can give me 10 or 12 absolutely non-negotiable statements of I am. I am a father. I am an alpha, right? As I said before.
Mm-hmm.
And then determine what your 5 or 6 core non-negotiable values are, right? What is the most important things to you? And then get you to live a life in alignment with those.
Yeah.
And if I can do that for you, you will have the confidence and clarity that every move you make is in alignment with who you want to be and what you value, and worlds open up for you.
Yeah.
No matter if you're struggling in your marriage or struggling in your business, you will know your path will light itself up.
So if somebody's listening to this and they are in need of coaching, or they think it's something that they might need to opt for, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, you can very easily go to my website, michaelshawmindset.com. And you'll see right there, just book a call with me. I'm happy to hop on. There's no charge. It's just for us to meet each other and me to understand where somebody's at. Um, and we go from there.
So once you have that conversation, then you have a better idea of if they're a fit or not for what it is that you're doing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So is there anything else you'd like to cover before we wrap up?
Um, if just I did put a little something together for your listeners. Um, if if you liked our conversation, and if anything I said hit home, and if you feel that you're a high achiever and you maybe look successful on paper, but you're carrying a lot of weight, or there's anything I can help you with, um, I built all of this with you in mind, right? And I want to give you 2 resources just as a thank you for listening to us today.
Mm-hmm.
So first is a mindset mastery breakthrough session, what we just discussed, a 60-minute deep dive where we can unpack the beliefs that have been holding you back. We can map out a clear and practical plan for your next level. And second, I've created something called the Mastery Mindset Library, which is an ever expanding, because I keep adding to it, group of workshops. I have hundreds of them now, all on different topics, ranging in every part of mental health and mindset awareness that you can imagine. Um, and it's a subscription, monthly subscription, and you go at your own pace. And what I'd like to give you is a 20% discount code for a full year of access to that library. So you can keep doing the reps long after this episode and listening to us ends. And to get those, just DM me the word mastery on Instagram at michaelshaw.mindset. It's MichaelShaw.mindset. And I'll personally send you all the details.
Beautiful. Michael Shaw, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Mike. It's been great. I really enjoyed it.
Appreciate you, bud. Can I ask you a question? Did you know that there's a technology that uses sound waves that'll tell your brain what to do? There literally is. It's called newcalm.com. It can tell your brain to heal, tell your brain to sleep, tell your brain to do all kinds of things. It can get you fired up. It can be a pre-workout. Newcalm.com. And the promo code is Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at the Mike Litton Experience.